He ain't no brain surgeon, all right? He took the SAT recently and scored a 520 out of a possible 1600.
520? You get 400 just for spelling your name correctly.
That's it. He messed up on his name.
Welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast.
This happens on Zoom. We both do the intro at the same time. This is the Mind Your Movies podcast for our episode 9, titled Blue Person.
Blue Person. Right.
Blue Person.
I've messed up on that so many times.
Yeah, because I always want to say Blue People, but it's Blue Person. The reason is because our topic this week is movies set in a college campus, college movies, I think we're going to call it. And we both picked movies we have not previously seen. So it was a little bit of a, interesting episode. And I chose Blue Chips and Ryan chose Cat Person from 2023. So that's what we're talking this week. And spoiler alert for both movies if you haven't seen them. Frankly, I don't know that either of us loved either movie. So if you hear the spoilers, maybe it's probably not going to be the end of the world. But just fair warning, we are going to spoil the movies. Yeah,
this is probably, I could imagine that if you're following our podcast, maybe you're clicking on this one just to hear us. But if you are not following the podcast, I can't imagine that too many people are going to click on this one for seeing the name Cat Person 2023, or maybe Blue Chips, but
maybe Blue Chips. But I feel like it doesn't have as much. I don't know. It doesn't have a big cult following, I feel like.
Yeah.
Not as much as some other sports movies from the 80s and 90s, I think.
But you know what? Sometimes we got to go into these a little blind. Sometimes we pick movies that we both know, we've seen, we enjoy. And sometimes we just want to explore new stuff, right? So yeah.
And this is the downside of exploration sometimes. But they're interesting enough. There's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I guess we can just get right into it. Before we get into it, maybe if anyone wants to follow us, you can go to our letterbox, type in Mind Your Movies, all one word, will pop up, and from there you can go to our Instagram, our Blue Sky, and you can also go to our YouTube and all of our podcast, listening locations. So that's probably the easiest way to find us, because that has all of our links.
And there's links, I believe, to our own personal LinkedIn's. Nope. Wow.
Letterbox.
That's embarrassing. Letterbox. Don't find us on LinkedIn. I don't know if you can find us.
Go find I don't even know if I think I probably still have one out there somewhere. I haven't touched it in years.
But on our personal letterbox, you're welcome to follow us there too, to see what we watch all the time. Because we can't talk about everything on the podcast, of course, but we do like to do a little intro bit about some stuff that we've seen recently.
Wow, I completely forgot that that's a thing we do on every single episode, that we talk about what we've seen recently. All right, yeah, well, I'm down for that. You want to start?
Yeah, of course. So, yeah. I think maybe the most notable stuff that I've watched recently is I watched Creep from 2014 and Creep 2 from 2017, which are these found footage movies that follow a filmmaker that goes to somebody's house to make a film for the person, like just on following a like Craigslist ad or something like that, right? And stuff.
It's found footage, right?
Found footage, yep. And then some creepy stuff starts happening. So I would say they're both very good movies. If you're into found footage, you've probably heard of at least the first one. But Creep Tapes just came out, which is a series on Shudder that follows the same main character, and I believe it's the same director as both of these. So I've been excited to watch the show. So I rewatched both of these movies, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice, very cool. My first movie of 2025 on Letterboxd, Pawn Sacrifice. Very random. I was like, what's going to be the first movie? And then I just said, fuck it. I kind of just feel like watching Pawn Sacrifice for some reason. And you know what? Very solid movie. As it was shot by, oh God, what's the guy's name? He's a really good cinematographer who is named Bradford Young. And he shot like Arrival and a bunch of other stuff. And so it actually looks really good and really great performances and just like a solid, chill Sunday afternoon movie to watch. Although it is about a guy going completely crazy and like schizophrenia and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit dark, but it's still a breezy Hollywood Sunday afternoon movie, I think. But it was well made and good. and I like chess, so solid
The average
movie.
Sunday afternoon. Um, yeah, nice. My first movie of the year, actually. I made a point of trying to watch something like iconic for the first of the year. So I watched the original Night of the Living Dead. Uh, Fantastic movie. I have it on Criterion, so I was like, might as well make my way through this Criterion box and watched it. It was
Yeah,
great.
you got the Criterion 40 set, right?
Yes, that's right. So far, I've watched. I watched House. I've watched Night of the Living Dead, and I also actually just this week watched Safe, 1995, Todd Haynes, and that movie was incredibly impactful. I think very emotional, very like raw. So would totally recommend that movie if people haven't seen it.
Yeah, that's a great movie. And also, House is a great movie. A little more different tone than Safe, but for everyone listening, next week we're talking House, 1977, the Japanese film, and yeah, it's going to be episode 9.5. So we're excited for that. We both love it, and yeah,
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm excited for that.
yeah. I watched a bunch of good movies actually so far. I watched a Gus Van Sant movie To Die For, which I thought was all right. I'd kind of been wanting to watch that for a long time, and then I was a little bit disappointed by it, but it was still a good movie. Um, and I watched Showing Up, the Kelly Reichardt movie, which is a fantastic movie. I loved it. Kelly Reichardt's one of my favorite directors, so it was a great movie. And Andre 3000 is in it, and it's kind of just a slice of life depiction of like life as an artist, but sort of an unromanticized version of that, very more realistic and raw. But also, it's a funny movie, and it was great. So I would highly
Nice.
recommend that.
Awesome. I oddly this year so far, I've watched a decent amount of movies, but I've also watched like a lot of shorts, which um, isn't super traditional for me. I mean, I like a short film every once in a while, but part of it is I watched through. Well, I watched The Suicide, which is a Todd Haynes short that's on the Safe Criterion disc. Um, I also watched all the shorts that are on the Frogman Blu-ray that I have, which were awesome. But I
Nice.
also watched a weird Estonian animated short film that got lost. It was lost media for quite a bit. Called Ligub, or It Moves from 1977. And it follows like a caveman that like slowly learns how to do a bunch of stuff and eventually builds a car. And it's very strange and very like very cute. It's stop motion. It's wonderful. It's available for free online. If you just search League Up, you'll find like the link to watch it. Now that it's been found, it was only found like last March, so March of 2024. So it's 9 minutes long. I like don't think I'd recommend it enough to people. It was very fun.
Nice. It's funny. I actually watched a short film also called Goodbye Jerome. It was on the Criterion Channel. Great movie. Like psychedelic. This guy dies. Well, yeah, he kills himself because his wife dies. So he kills himself to be with the wife, and he's in uh, the afterlife, and it's this psychedelic dream world basically, and he's just traveling through it, looking for his wife. And I'm not going to spoil it. It's only like 10 minutes long, but I'm not going to spoil what happens. But really fantastic short. So yeah, short films are great.
Oh yeah.
They're really cool to watch. Obviously, they're nice and short. They're under 90 minutes, so it's perfect for Ryan. Uh, but like I don't know. I feel like people underrate how much you can get out of a short film. Like something doesn't have to be an hour and a half or 2 hours for it to still be creative and have an impact and be memorable. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
but that's also the only short film that I watched recently. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I think that's pretty much that covers a lot of stuff for me.
All right. Well, I wanted to mention this movie. Well, I watched Miracle Mile, which was way darker than I expected. It's about this guy. It's from 1988, and this guy answers a phone call on a telephone booth, and someone tells him that the US is about to, in an hour, they're gonna fire off their nuclear weapons, and then the Russians are gonna fire back, and he has like an hour and 10 minutes until nuclear apocalypse. So he doesn't know if it's real or not, and uh, you know, chaos ensues. And really good sort of like cult classic movie. It was darker than I expected. I expected it to be a little more comedic. It is comedic, especially toward the beginning, but it's also kind of a depressing movie. But good movie. And Let the Corpses Tan was a great movie that I watched recently. A Belgian sort of like take on the spaghetti western, but like an art house, like way out there take. Like almost everything is shot in close up, and it's very quick editing. It's like kind of disorienting. Basically, it takes place on like a coastal village, and these guys they rob like an armored truck of gold bars, and they're hiding out. Cops come after them, shootout ensues, stuff like that. It's pretty simple like story, but the way it's told is really bold and in your face, like crazy filmmaking. So really, really cool movie. Um, and then last night I rewatched Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby for fun, and it was very good. The first 30 minutes of Talladega Nights, I swear, are like iconic masterpiece level. Like every scene, I'm like, oh, love this one. And then toward the end, it gets a little bit like, it's all right, it's fine. But the beginning is just fantastic. So many quotable lines. Just a classic 2000s comedy.
Nice. Wow, I would say we've had busy weeks here the past couple
Yeah.
weeks. It's the beginning of the new year. Maybe that impacted it.
Yeah, beginning of the new year, my work's been a little slow, but and also my dog just got neutered, so he's been just like relaxing at home. So we've been just hanging out with him, making sure he doesn't run and jump too much, I guess. Uh, but but yeah, so had some extra time for movies, I guess.
Nice.
But yeah,
Awesome.
all right. So should we get into Blue Person?
Yes, and I think naturally we start with the blue, which is Blue Chips.
Yes, Blue Chips, 1994. This was my pick. It's about college basketball. There might be one scene in a classroom and one scene in a dorm room, and that's about it. Other than that, it takes place on a basketball court or recruiting. But this is an aspect of college. It is very specific to its time, also. But yeah, so the movie's from 1994, written by Ron Shelton, who wrote and directed Bull Durham and White Men Can't Jump. He did a bunch of sports. He was a minor league baseball player in the 70s, I believe, and then he became a screenwriter, and he wrote a bunch of sports movies in like the 90s, basically. And yeah, I mean, Bull Durham and White Men Can't Jump are two of the best sports movies of all time, in my opinion. They're just and mainly because of Ron Shelton, I think, like they come off as so authentic with the dialogue and everything. So that was a big reason why I wanted to watch this movie. And also, it's directed by William Friedkin, who has one of the greatest directorial runs of the 70s. Like he did from 1970 to 1980. He did the Boys in the Band, The French Connection, Best Picture, The Exorcist, Sorcerer, The Brink's Job, and Cruising. Like, and just an incredible run.
On fire.
Yeah. And then he had kind of a weird 80s and 90s. He was doing some TV things. This was a couple years before he did the remake of 12 Angry Men. So yeah, he's just an interesting director. And I do think you can see his style in some of the basketball scenes. He shoots them like an action scene, kind of like in like the French Connection almost. But yeah, basically the story follows Pete Bell, played by Nick Nolte, who's the coach of a college program. He's won national championships in the past, but the school is sort of faltering. They're not getting good recruits because they don't pay their players, which in the 1994 was considered a bad thing. Because it was against the rules to pay college athletes. Obviously, now there's the NIL and athletes can actually get paid. But yeah, so that's an interesting aspect of the movie. But yeah, the story is basically him and his moral quandary of trying to recruit three star high school basketball players. Played by Neon, played by Shaquille O'Neal. Butch, played by Penny Hardaway. And the other guy's name was Ricky, and he was played by a guy who played at Indiana, and I forget his name.
Matt Nove, I think, or
Yeah, Matt Norver, something like that.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he it's kind of funny just because he like played college basketball and then I think he played like overseas, but then he's like right next to two of the best players of the 90s. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, he's basically recruiting them and he has to like, is he gonna pay him or not? So it's a very interesting movie. But anyway, that's a long intro. Ryan, what did you think of Blue Chips?
Yeah. Well, starting off, there's the general like reception, I guess, of the movie, which I think it sounds like was kind of initially maybe not as good as it is today. It seems like it's maybe gained a little bit more of a following today than it did at the time. But in general, it's got 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, 51% in the audience score, 6.3 on IMDb, and 3.2 on Letterboxd, giving it a 5.45 average, which
That's
is
low.
Yeah, it is.
Did you say 40? 40?
40, yeah.
On Rotten. Wow, that's quite low.
Yeah, so the critic score there is 40%. It's surprising, I think, but
it's one of the lowest we've done, I think.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, I
Trap might be the only one that's in competition or old, actually.
Yeah, looking back, like I mean,
it's got to be our lowest rated non-Shyamalan movie.
If I'm looking, I mean, just like quickly looking back, we did Black Christmas 2019 kind of recently, although we didn't really like.
That's not canon.
Yeah,
that and the 2006 movie are not Mind Your Movies podcast canon.
Yes, because those are very low, like very low.
Yeah, understandably.
But yeah, so I mean, it is like I would say pretty poorly received overall. I would think. I mean, I liked a lot of parts of the movie. I think Nick Nolte did like a fantastic performance. Just to start with, I did sports in high school, but not in college. But in high school, I mean, I think Nick Nolte comes off as a coach, right? And I can see that he must have done a ton of research and like learning how to fit into this role because he really played it very well, and his performances were just really fantastic. The movie opens up with, it might even be like my favorite part of the movie still after the whole thing, which is at the beginning of the movie, he's like yelling and hollering in the locker room, like ripping stuff out of the lockers and throwing it on the ground, telling them that the team doesn't deserve any of the lockers and stuff. And
they should play in their jock straps and all that.
Yeah.
And then we learn that this is before a game. This is not after a loss. This is before the game.
Amazing.
And he walks out, he storms out and he tells the assistant coaches, all right, you tell him the game plan. And he storms out. And right as the assistant coaches start talking, he bursts back in and he starts berating them again. And he does it a second time. He leaves and he comes back. And yeah, that is a great opening scene to just set the tone of what this guy is like and what just set the tone of the movie.
Yeah. And you're supposed to think they just lost the game, and then they're going out to play the game, and of course on the court too, he's yelling at the ref, and he kicks the ball into the stands, and at one point,
he gets ejected.
Yeah. Oh, and then he's in the press conference, and I like the whole beginning of this movie is like really he's clearly the centerpiece. I mean, this is before our true like main character players are introduced, right? He goes to recruit them after this, but he's at the press conference and he just opens up the press conference and says, "That's about all I have on that. Any questions, stupid or otherwise?" After he talks briefly about the game, and then the first guy that asks a question, he just goes, "Yeah, that's a stupid question. Next."
Yep. Yeah, this part of the movie, it is a really strong opening, I think.
Yeah.
I think that opening scene does feel like it has that Ron Shelton touch to me, where it's funny, but it's like darkly funny, but also very realistic. Like this does seem like how this character would act. And I think the movie as it goes on loses some of that in my opinion. But the opening scene is really strong. And yeah, his character I think is sort of modeled after Bobby Knight, which is funny because then
Oh,
Bobby Knight is in the movie at the end.
that
So
is funny.
it's kind of weird. But yeah, really strong opening to the movie. But
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, at the end. So his team is facing off against Bobby Knight's team at the end, right?
yep.
And both of them are pretty docile during that game. I mean, there's a couple of, interactions, but he doesn't kick a fucking ball.
Yeah. Well, Bobby Knight was known for having like you throw chairs on the court. Like he was basically a psycho, but everyone loved him. This is the thing. So this is the thing. This movie's from 1994, and I think if like a teenager watched this today, they'd be like, "This man is psychotic. Like he's
Yeah.
completely insane. What the fuck is wrong with this guy?" And frankly, they'd be right. But at the time, this was considered coaching.
Yeah.
Was screaming at their players and just expecting them to play better because you're screaming at them. And it was just very, very of its time movie. But yeah.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Definitely. So I think that whole bit before he even goes to recruit people is just my favorite part of the movie. Even after, like, I thought it was such a strong opening, and I was pretty excited for the movie. And then as it goes on, you always expect something to surpass kind of your initial feelings.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything really, really did. I think that was like still left the biggest impression on me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another part of the movie that's kind of important is the basketball scenes themselves, which from what I understand, they actually played games like 5-on-5 scrimmages basically, and they just filmed them. And I think the basketball seems very authentic because it is. And I think the scenes are really well done. Like there's a scene of Shaq like dunk like in Louisiana, and that feels very inauthentic to me, and is in comparison to the other scenes. But they have a bunch of real like basketball players in here. Like the cast is ridiculous. There's like first of all, there's all the coaches that appear in this, which is funny because this movie's all about how corrupt the NCAA is, and then all these coaches are like, "Yeah, sure, I'll be in here while you imply that I pay my players off, like bribe them." But like Bobby Knight, Rick Pitino, uh, uh, also Jim Boeheim is in it, and then there's Larry Bird has a cameo. Bob Cousy plays the athletic director at Western University, which is the school Pete Bell coaches at. Dick Vitale is in it, and then the basketball players. There's Allen Houston and Rick Fox. Are you can see them like very quickly if you're looking out for them. Bobby Hurley is in it. Apparently, Kevin Garnett is in it at one point, but he's uncredited, and I could not catch him. But I think he would have been like 17 when they were filming, so maybe that's why he was uncredited. I don't know, but yeah, it's just like a crazy cat, and just watching it from that perspective, I think is a those are some of the better scenes in the movie. Even though to critique those scenes a little bit, I do think Friedkin's style of like a little everything felt a little too close up. Like I just wanted it to be a little wider and just see the action a little better. I feel like Friedkin almost invented the shaky cam action scene with like French Connection, and like he's kind of using that technique in the basketball scenes. And to me, I'm like, I just want to watch the basketball. Like you don't have to be like unnaturally close up and all this stuff. Like because they're really playing basketball, you might as well show the game. So yeah, so those scenes were cool, and the basketball was good, even if some of the ways it was filmed didn't fully work for me.
Yeah, I agree on both those points. The basketball did seem really authentic, and I made a note that I assumed it was because of all the actual players that were in it, but I didn't know. I can't really point out basketball players generally, so but just watching, it felt like they were really playing, right, which was really cool.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, the camera work, I didn't love it here, and it's weird because there's one part, the last couple seconds of their big game at the end, and they have like the little timer from the scoreboard like clipped onto the bottom right of the of the camera. Um, it looks like it's just like cut and paste like on like iMovie or something, right? Like, I mean, hey, I'm you know, I'm not the world's best editor, but it was not the most immersive way to show us the timing that was left. And I felt like it would have been very impactful there if they just shot it like a real game, right? Like uh, real games do it so that you can see the time that's left and all this stuff, right? Maybe not like fully like a real game, but like a little bit more so it felt more authentic in that way. Because I did think when I saw the little timer on the bottom, I was like, that's goofy. Like it just looks goofy, right?
I didn't even notice that, but I see your point.
That's funny that you didn't notice it because I think when it was on the screen for me, I couldn't take my eyes off.
That's funny.
I was like,
do you remember which game that was?
It was the last game. It was
the
like
last game.
Yeah, the last few seconds because he calls the timeout, and then once they get out of the timeout, that's when the timer's at the bottom.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you got to look that scene up on YouTube or something after because it was pretty jarring.
Yeah, that's fair. I wonder if I was just like that's how like basketball broadcasts in the 80s and 90s were more rudimentary. Like like now they have like the score bug up all the time, but like sometimes they wouldn't even be up and then they'd put it up randomly or they just put like so maybe that is part of the reason that they wanted it to look like
so maybe it was trying to be authentic and it just doesn't look authentic to what I think of for a game, but that's because I didn't watch games.
Well, and the camera angles aren't TV camera angles, like they're very close up and putting us in the action. Yeah.
Which I think kind of goes along with one of the other like main things that well, before I jump into that, actually, I will say in terms of the second game too, I feel like there was this weird tonal shift of like, so Nick Nolte's character goes and he like figures out that one of his players, his like star player before he went and recruited these guys, had like shaved points on a game, right? And so then he's having this like kind of breakdown and is realizing that this corruption is like pretty widespread and that he maybe, fed into something that he didn't want to and is realizing the repercussions of that or whatever, right? And so he's having this like breakdown. He goes to his ex-wife's house and she's like, dude, I know you lied to me. Like, I don't want to talk to you right now. And he's at this very like emotional and like kind of raw state. And then like really quickly we end up at the last game and it seems like he's fine. And it seems like the players are cool and they're all about to play. And then we just watch the whole game go on. And it's not until like the last few seconds of the game when you start seeing that like you get these like flashbacks, like he's hearing Ricky at one point is like, dude, give me 30 grand in cash and I'll join your team. Yeah. Right. And he's like hearing this stuff in his head again. And it feels like for the whole game, pretty much, you just lost the idea of there was this like thing boiling up for him. Right. And maybe that's because, he had adrenaline going into the game, I'm sure, or whatever. Right. But it just felt like a weird tonal shift to me that I couldn't like believe that he just turned that off, and went and played a game.
It's funny. I think I agree, but almost in the flip of I completely did not buy that he would feel guilty. They set up. So this is the huge flaw with this movie is that the ending is like Hollywood bullshit to me. So this whole movie, this guy is set up as a fucking psycho, like winner. He will do anything to win. He will scream at his players. He'll do it. And sure, he cares about him. He does. He wants to help him out. But ultimately, this guy wants to win. And when he goes to recruit people, he lies to their face. He's like, "Oh yeah, I grew up Catholic. I grew up Baptist," which is a funny part of the movie. But also it does show his character. Like, frankly, the Pete Bell character doesn't have good character. He's not a good, morally just person who's going to do everything right. He wants to do what he has to do to win. So him paying players to come to his school makes sense. But then all of a sudden at the end, for absolutely no reason, this guy has like a moral conundrum that, well, frankly, the point shaving scandal with Tony, it was his freshman year. frankly, if you had paid Tony to go to the school, he probably wouldn't have shaved points. If you had given him 30 grand and a car, he wouldn't have shaved the fucking points. So, and then it just comes out of nowhere. He's winning the game. And I understand I thought it would have been really interesting actually for them to win the game and then he feels like empty inside. And that's the ending of, but instead of that, it goes this Hollywood direction where he at the press conference admits to all of his crimes and gives this bullshit speech, just absolute garbage. And it just did not feel real at all. That this, because I mean, just look at real life. This has never happened, and there's a reason why no one would ever do that, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it just did not feel in line with the character at all,
Mhm.
and it kind of like it was just annoying, man. Like for it to go in such a sappy direction, I hated it.
Yeah. I totally agree that it was getting very Hollywoody. Like, I mean, there's one point where he like storms into Tony's room, right? Like he's like banging on the door. He's like breaking into this kid's dorm room, essentially, and like is pushing him against the wall and like in a hot sweat about some kid that shaved points years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like, dude, move on. Like
Right. But also that does show his like he's like an angry, violent man. Like this guy,
yeah.
he's not some moral beacon. So his change at the end makes no sense.
Yeah. But I do think that like regardless of like that they were doing that change or not, it felt like when they hit the opening to that last game, it hit this like there was this change going on. And then they hit the opening to the last game, and then it just stops for the whole game until the end. And I was like, listen, if you're trying to sell me on the idea that he's, you know, morally conflicted or whatever, right? Then what are you doing just like throwing a game in now? Like, I understand that it's a basketball movie, and I want to see more games in a basketball movie, but it just felt like a weird, like sudden shift. And I'm like, I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, now I'm supposed to be excited about the game. All right, I can do that, but what the hell? Like,
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of execution, kind of, because I think they could have made it more clear his moral conflict throughout the game rather than them sort of laying it on really thick just at the end.
right.
So yeah, I think if they had done better, maybe like him in his office beforehand, like clearly
Yes.
like, you know, feeling conflicted, feeling distant or something like that would make sense. Like there could have been a better way of handling it, probably.
I totally agree. And then I do agree also that the last, like that press conference at the end was just, it just felt like, it's like Tony Stark revealing that he's Iron Man. Like, I don't buy this at all. Like, he's like, and at first, I kind of do buy it a little bit at first when like everyone's trying to laugh it off, and I'm like, all right, but he's not really gonna do it, right? And then he does, and I'm like, all right, well, there goes that, like,
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't
yeah,
buy it at all either.
yeah,
But I will. So we talked a lot about Nick Nolte, who is the main character. Also, his ex-wife, which is a very strange relationship. We could talk about at some point. But this movie has a lot of side plots and side characters.
Ooh.
It's too many. There's, I mean, first of all, there's the three different kids that he's recruiting. I don't know why it couldn't have just been one. To be honest, it should have just been Penny Hardaway. The Shaq is a horrible actor. Absolutely. Half of his dialogue is incomprehensible. Like
Yeah.
he's not a good actor. And the Matt Norver story was like, I don't really, he's not really that interesting.
I didn't like him. I didn't like his acting at all.
No.
Every line he delivered, I was like, this guy just sounds so awkward. This guy's like forced to be in a theater right now. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, he's not great. But I will say, I think Penny Hardaway is surprisingly a good actor.
Yeah.
Like for a 21-year-old kid who's never acted before, he's just a basketball player. Like he was believable. That scene when he goes to Pete's office and says like, "Hey, like I don't like the offense, but whatever. I'm not comfortable here. If I leave the school, is my mom going to lose her house?" Like that scene, he actually was believable. And I thought he was actually very good.
Yeah, they could not have had either of the other two do that scene. That would have been a mess.
No, that would yeah, it would have been a disaster. Um, and I will say another basketball player who I think gave a very good performance was Bob Cousy. He plays obviously Celtics legend. Bob Cousy plays the athletic director at Western University, and he is like legitimately good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting that I don't know the performances vary so much, which makes sense because you have a bunch of people who aren't actors acting in this movie. Um,
Yeah. And the benefit of that is that the basketball scenes are awesome. And you
yeah,
get some like really well-known people in that world in a movie, which is awesome. But the downside of that is definitely you kind of feel that in the acting a lot of times.
yeah. And to mention the other side plots, there's also a side plot barely involving these journalists. One of them is the main guy, the main journalist is named Ed, played by Ed O'Neill. And at the beginning of the movie, he's like talking about investigating this points shaving scandal, and he's sort of set up as an antagonist to Pete. And then he basically disappears the entire movie. And then at the end, he's present at the press conference, but does nothing. He's basically a completely unnecessary character that did nothing for the movie. And then there's also the booster, who is named Happy, played by J.T. Walsh, who I did think his character was actually one of the better parts of the movie. I thought his speech about uh, uh, we owe the players this was very interesting, even if it is sort of a justification for what he's doing because he does other things that are bad. But in
Mhm.
that speech, I was like, yeah, he's actually right. Like you've made millions of dollars off of these basketball players who like kind of made jack shit.
Yeah.
So, uh, so yeah, I mean, that's the end. I mean, we can get into the relationship with his wife too, but I think all of these side plots, some of them work, some of them don't. But ultimately, it's too many for one movie. They needed to focus in, I think.
I agree. There's even like uh yeah, Shaquille O'Neal at one point well at one point, I mean at the beginning, he is like failing the SAT. So Nick Nolte gets his ex-wife to tutor him. But then he doesn't actually need the tutor because he knows what he's doing. He just like as a matter of principle fails it or something. And then in the classroom later, he like makes this he kind of makes a scene in a classroom later. And none of that like ever actually matters.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very weird. The culturally biased thing is like a callback, like joke kind of, but I didn't. It was very weird. Like it didn't really line up with his character. Like this is
Yeah.
supposed to be a guy who was in the army and like from rural Louisiana. So and I don't know. Like it just felt weird. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be serious or if we were supposed to be laughing at him for saying that. I wasn't really sure what that stuff was kind of weird.
Yeah. It was very, and I don't know if we really needed those, like, if we needed all of that. Like, I like building a little bit into the characters, but like, it felt weird to have that one classroom scene particularly. And also, it felt weird that like you need to get him a tutor, and then he actually didn't need the tutoring.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that was strange. Yeah, the classroom scene was definitely unnecessary as well. It does nothing. It tells us like the Matt Norver character likes chicks because he's looking at a girl's legs, and it's like, all right, we already knew that. Like he said that multiple
Yeah, he
times.
just says it. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
weird too.
it was very very weird. I guess it shows Penny Hardaway because Penny Hardaway tries to like walk away from them, kind of. Um, but Frank, I think the movie could have been better if it was all from Penny Hardaway's perspective. Like, what
Yeah,
about that? What about his moral conundrum of like, this is against the rules, but like this is gonna help my family so much and all that type of stuff. Like that could have been a very interesting angle on the movie as well.
yeah. And then he realizes, of course, like in the movie, he realizes, maybe I don't want to be doing this, right? And then he's like, but can I give it up now? Right. And then he
Yeah,
has, yeah, that I think that would have been way more interesting.
yeah,
Um,
but
yeah,
yeah, I think this movie I don't know. There's also like a Larry Bird cameo, which is completely unnecessary.
yeah,
And Larry Bird is I love Larry Bird, but he's not a good actor. he's he's very stiff, and it's very weird. He's like Pete Bell shows up there. Pete Bell never he coached Western University. That's not where, which is, I don't even know. I think it's a made up school.
yeah.
But like Larry Bird didn't go. How does he know Larry Bird? And then the next, he's like asking to see the Matt Norver character, and then Larry Bird's not even in the next scene. So what was even? It was just to have a Larry Bird cameo, really.
Yeah, and the cameo is at it's at his court, right? That he ends
Yeah.
up doing that or he did the Magic Johnson
Yep. It was like a
commercial.
commercial.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, Larry was probably like, "All right, I'll film your movie, but you got to come to me." Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. Like, if you film it in my backyard, I'll do it. Sure. um, but yeah, so yeah, this movie's very overstuffed. How did you feel? I think the ex-wife character, their relationship is very strange. Um, the fact that they are divorced seems like their relationship doesn't seem like the relationship of a divorced couple. Like they're constantly talking to each other and like interacting, and he just shows up at the house and all this stuff, and it just seemed weird. And I wasn't sure if they had kids. Like we don't learn that much about their relationship.
Yeah.
Um, she's kind of just there to be like the good person who's like tells him he's a liar at the end of the movie. But it's kind of a I don't know. Like I think the actress's name is Mary McDonnell. Yeah, and she's good, but the character in that whole part of the movie I felt like was a little undercooked.
Yeah. I totally agree. And like it just felt like I don't know if like again, there's the whole bit with her being the tutor. And then there's also like they go to a dinner one time and he's getting asked for autographs at this dinner, which I thought was weird too. Do we want autographs of college basketball coaches? Is that a thing?
I feel like you could. Well, it's
Yeah.
interesting because the movie's set in L.A. and I feel like in L.A. that would be less common. If it was Bobby Knight in Indiana,
Oh
I would
yeah.
believe it.
Yeah.
Right. Or, like, or if Jim Boeheim is in Syracuse, like it's in upstate New York, like he's a celebrity there. But
Right.
in LA, it was a little less believable, I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, speaking of this character, the ex-wife character, how does she have that house? She has like this. She's like a teacher in LA, and she has this massive house.
Well,
We see at the end.
I assume he's made millions and millions of dollars coaching, and he
Oh.
probably bought the house and then she kept the house in the divorce.
Yeah.
That was probably it.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
But
because he's living in like a little apartment, seems like.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't particularly felt like she was a compelling character, even in the part that she was supposed to be important in, where she's like telling him that he's a liar. It just kind of felt like almost like a throwaway scene. He seems to have that realization on his own, and then it kind of all comes together at the last bit of that game, anyways. So it's like it feels like there's a lot of points in this when they just tell us stuff that we don't necessarily need told, like her telling him that he's a liar, and even as something as stupid as like what's his name, Ricky telling us that he likes he's just in it for the girls. Like you can either tell us or show us that. Like we don't need to see that later on. Also, like I don't know, it just felt like there was a lot of times when they really just tried to force stuff to us, right? Even like that whole last conference, the whole last press conference thing feels like the explosion of this telling us everything that we know.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I feel like maybe this is just an element of Hollywood changing in the 80s into the 90s, but I feel like in the 70s, if William Friedkin has directed this, like it perhaps, I don't know, just the way American films were made at the time. Maybe it's just a personal preference that I like that era of like Hollywood filmmaking, but like he would have just been a scumbag who was like morally conflicted and felt bad at the end of the movie, and he wouldn't have been like redeemed by going and he's coaching some little kids on a basketball court, which is whatever. Like it just was so schlock, such a cheesy ending.
Yeah, and they even have like the mockumentary text at the end of something like, Pete is still fighting refs at high school basketball games or something.
Yeah, he like coaches at a high school now or something. I'm like, come on, like it's just so ridiculous. Yeah, but yeah, I think you're totally right about the showing and the telling. Like they beat you over the head with all these character things or whatever, but it's just like there's so many things going on. They really needed to focus
Oh yeah.
in, and I think if they could have done that, and it could have been very interesting. Because another kind like interesting character in theory is Butch McRae's mom. Um,
Yeah.
played Lavada McRae, played by Alfra Woodard, I guess. But like that element of the movie is very interesting, but it's really just one scene, and then that's kind of it. Um, because there's so much other stuff going on in the movie. Um, so
Yeah. I mean, again, it would be like really interesting to get this from a perspective of just one. Like I don't know if it would be even just fixed if you just had just one kid, right? You have one kid that he's recruiting, and you go deep
uh,
into his family, or you just do it from the perspective of that one high school student that's being recruited, right? And that would be even more impactful because then you see the family like a little more firsthand, and you see the impact.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think this movie, like, there are good parts of the movie, there are bad parts. It's a very mixed bag, in general. So
yeah,
I understand why this has not really become a classic like sports movie. It's kind of, I don't know. I feel like it doesn't have like a cult following like some other sports movies from this era.
yeah. And I think that makes sense. I think the corruption piece, like exposing that, is interesting, and I think um, I think that I just wish they paid off better for all this stuff, right? The ethical and like moral conundrum that this guy's going through. The ending just felt like it throws all this away or throws it at you with like the whole book. It just throws the whole book at you.
Yeah. Yep. And I think one thing I thought it was interesting how the three main recruits have these different backgrounds, and the movie sort of wanted to explore that, but then it just kind of just leaves it there. It doesn't really explore it at all. Like I thought it could have been interesting if, I mean, again, maybe I'm not trying to address the movie, change what it is. Like it's kind of not the point. We just want to kind of take the movie as it is. But imagine like if we're mainly following from Penny Hardaway's perspective, and now he goes to college, and now he's interacting with players from all different backgrounds, and that's how it's like, oh yeah, like there's the Shaq character from rural Louisiana. He's gonna speak differently, especially in the '90s without the internet. Like there's so many cultural and geographical differences between all these guys that could be an interesting thing to explore just through interaction. Um, so I thought that could have been interesting, but it's another idea that's sort of just left on the table by the movie because there's too many ideas going on. So it can't really, I don't know. It just kind of shows you like, oh, this could be interesting, and then it just leaves it there.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of I feel like that's like my main problem with it. I feel like they had to either like I don't know, like I feel like part of this is the runtime is only it's an hour and 48 minutes. And to me it's like you either cut out a bunch of stuff and bring it down to that 90-minute mark. Just saying. Or or you dive deeper into some of this extra stuff that's in there, like intentionally, right? Like figure out the stuff that you want to be diving deeper into and what will make a bigger impact and make it a little bit longer. I feel like the length
if
doesn't, yeah, if just, yeah, sorry. I don't know.
No, I totally know what you're saying, and I think if they had cast some better actors, they could have turned this into like a 2.5 hour epic of you're following all these different characters, and you're able to explore everything uh like more deeply, and that could have been very interesting. But also I think like a 90-minute version of this that's way more focused on a couple characters would have been really interesting too. And that's the thing with like Ron Shell, like Bull Durham and White Men Can't Jump, which are, like I said, two of my favorite sports movies. Like those are really about like Bull Durham is just about one guy, and he's a minor league catcher, and it's like from his perspective, he has the baseball element of the story and his romantic part of his life, and it's just a great sort of rom-com dramedy kind of a thing. Um, and White Man Can't Jump is really just about these two guys that are different and they have to work together and stuff like that. Like, And obviously, they have their girlfriends as well, which is a part of the story. But like both those movies are way more focused than this movie. Like this one has so much going on that none of it is able to be fully fleshed out, and none of it felt really real. But
Yeah, absolutely. Um,
yeah, I guess
yeah,
that's pretty much all I have to say on Blue Chips. I don't know if there's that much more to say.
no, I
Um,
mean, yeah, I think we've talked a lot about some of what we liked and some of our issues with it. Do you think? I mean, I guess rating, but also, do you think you'd recommend the movie? I know
you
we've
know,
just spoiled the whole thing, but
yeah. If someone was really into basketball, it might be worth watching just to see all the cameos and like see, Penny Hardaway and Shaq and, you know, sort of understand a different time. You know what I mean? Like if there's like a high school kid out there who loves basketball, it'd be like, all right, you could watch this, but it's not probably not going to be one of his favorite basketball movies, in my opinion. Um, so maybe a light recommendation for a very particular audience.
yeah,
So not the strongest endorsement. Um, but yeah, that's the whole reason that I gave this 2.5 out of 5. Thought it
nice.
was, yeah, like I said before, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a mixed bag, and there is stuff that I really like. I think, yeah, I mean, if you're really into sports, I could see recommending it, but um, it's hard with just like there's so many like better sports movies out there. Like, I certainly wouldn't recommend this before you've dived into other sports movies. But I don't know. I mean, I think there is some cool stuff that's going on too, and I think it's hard. Like, I mean, that opening scene is awesome, and I love that. So I feel like I could like half recommend it to people. I don't know, like with the stipulation that like you know there's some interesting stuff going on here, but it's not really fully fleshed out, and you might not feel totally excited by the end of it, but there's stuff that you'll enjoy during it, right?
Yeah.
But I ultimately, I gave it 2 stars out of 5. Um, yeah.
Damn, you hate
No,
it.
nope.
I'm
I did
kidding.
not
I'm
hate
kidding. I'm kidding. It's just a joke. Just a joke.
it.
Also, for people watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my Drew Holiday jersey in honor of Blue Chips, the Blue Chips episode. Even though Drew Holiday is not in the episode at all, but I don't know. It's unrelated to it.
Basketball.
It's basketball, exactly.
There we go.
So yeah, I guess that's it for Blue Chips. And on to another mixed bag of a movie, Cat Person,
Definitely.
2023. Ryan, do you want to get
Sure.
into some of the background and maybe some of the reception of the movie?
Yeah. So this is Cat Person 2023, not Cat People, which we've messed up on a lot. But
Yes.
so this is directed by Susanna Fogel and written by Michelle Ashford, and it's based on a short story actually by Kristen Roupenian. And I think the short story has the same name, but it was published
Yeah.
in like the New York Times or the New Yorker. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't read the short story for this. I thought maybe I would, but ultimately I didn't. But
Well, did you think you were gonna, and then you watched the movie and you're like, eh.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened. I honestly never planned on reading it. I didn't know it was based on a short story till after, but yeah.
I did a little bit of research before just to like you know see what's going on with the movie a little bit, and I was like, the fact that it's based on a short story, if it's based on like a book, I'm not going to read the book, but like a short story published in the New Yorker, I could probably commit some time to, right? But then, yeah, at the end of the movie, I was kind of like, well, I think I'm good, unfortunately, but
From what I understand, all the third act of this movie is added on,
yeah,
and that is all basically the junk of the movie. Some of the more interesting parts are in that beginning first hour or so. So maybe the short story is very good. We haven't read it.
yeah. So and this, I think this movie, I don't think we're alone in jumping in and saying that like it's not the best movie out there. The reception online is 46% on Rotten Tomatoes, so not too much higher than Blue Chips. 45% on audience score, 6 out of 10 on IMDb, and 2.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So in some regards higher, but usually lower than Blue Chips, bringing it to 5.125 average. So again, one of our lower ones on the show. I don't think our lowest, but
down there.
Yeah,
lower than Blue Chips.
Lower than Blue Chips by a little bit. So, and our two main actors, we've got Amelia Jones as Margot and Nicholas Braun as Robert, but also Geraldine Viswanathan, who is Taylor, the best friend in the movie, who was one of the main characters in Driveway Dolls this year or last year.
Yes. Yeah.
So
kind Ethan of Coen movie.
That's right.
Half the Coen brothers.
Yes, the Coen brothers.
I think once they split up and I saw Joel Coen's Macbeth and then I saw Ethan Coen's Driveway Dolls, I was like, oh, I think I see who's... I don't know if this is a 50-50 relationship all these years. That was a sharp difference in quality. In my opinion.
Yeah, but so this movie really follows our main girl, Margot. She's a college student and she goes on a date with this guy that she meets at the movie theater where she works. And he's a little bit older, but she kind of likes him. So then when she goes away for the holidays or whatever, for break, they stay in touch. They're texting a lot. But they start to get a little distant when she gets back. They get back together, kind of, but she still feels kind of awkward about it. So she tries to break it off, but there's a lot of conflicting opinions on how to break it off. Somewhat Margot's idea, but somewhat like her roommate and best friend Taylor kind of is like, hey, just cut it off, right? And Margot's kind of like, well, he's kind of a good guy. I don't want to do that. But anyways, and then there's a whole third act.
Yeah.
And I...
Well, there's a sex scene in the middle, which is very crucial to the story and very disturbing. Maybe it's
Jeez, you want to start there? All right.
No, we don't have to start there. I was just saying that's because you said then there's the third act. I think that is a turning point in the story where after that things change, and then I guess that's the reason why the main character makes some of the decisions that she makes at the end, even though that stuff was all kind of bad in my opinion. But the beginning of the movie, there is some interesting things. Yeah. So her working at the movie theater, and it starts with the Margaret Atwood quote: "The men are afraid of women laughing at them, and women are afraid of men killing them." I think that's the quote. So something like that. And that's basically the idea of the movie. That's like what they're exploring, because Margot has this fear and I kind of just paranoia about this guy, which then it's kind of, I don't know, some of the characters' decisions in this movie are very strange to me. But that really at the beginning of the movie, they're telling you like this is the theme of the movie, like this is what it's about, right there for you.
Yeah. And one really cool thing that I think throughout the whole movie that kind of relates to that is that we get to see like Margot's thoughts a lot of times. There's times when like she'll be like she gets trapped early on. She goes on this date with the guy and they go to, she's like, she works in a lab that has a bunch of bones at school, or she goes to that lab for school. And at one point he goes over there and they get trapped in a closet together on accident. And we like see him attack her, but it's like just her thoughts. And she starts to have like a panic attack in there. And I thought that for the most part, when we got to see like her thoughts, it was like pretty well done. And I was like intrigued and stuff. But I also thought, well, I think that, it seemed like she was maybe a little paranoid, but also it was interesting to get that insight into what she was thinking.
Yeah, I think those, I don't know, those scenes I was kind of on the fence on because I don't know, this movie sort of is selling itself as a thriller, maybe even a horror movie. Like there's
Yeah.
a scene early on where she tries to let a dog into her building, and then the RA is like being a bitch about it, and she's like, "You can't have that dog," and all that. Which honestly, I guess it makes sense. You can't have dogs in dorm rooms, but also it's kind of like, well, anyway, not an important part of the movie. That character does not come back and have anything to do with anything. But then she's asleep, and we see the dog kill that girl and like rip her head off, and it's a dream sequence, and like there are several of these dream sequences, and it is good to show us her like paranoia, I guess, and what she's thinking. But I think with the genre of the movie, like it felt like sort of a cheap way to give us like scares, like horror sequences without anything actually happening in the story. And
Yeah.
then I feel like the movie at the end goes full like horror thriller thing. And that was the worst part of the movie. So part of me is like, I feel like this could have been a lot better if it was just sort of a drama. Uh,
Yes.
right?
I
So
totally agree with that for sure.
and we still could have seen maybe the dream sequences, but maybe they would have been less horror, less of a horror tone around them. So
Yeah.
that way we're still being shown her, what she's thinking and what she's afraid of, without sort of the cheap horror aspect of it.
Yeah. There was one time that I thought it paid off really well where it wasn't horror. And I think this was a standout to me because it wasn't that horror. Because I think this movie kind of does a disservice trying to fit into that horror mode, right? Like you were saying. But there was one time when they just saw Star Wars, or maybe they're on their way to see Star Wars. But no, I think they had just watched Star Wars and they're outside the theater, and he's like, "Oh, you hated it" or something, and then they're talking, and she like realizes that like he really liked the movie because it's like the first romantic movie that he saw that he thought was romantic or something, right? So then
Yep.
she envisions him at the therapist office, and then she starts to envision her there too and stuff. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, yeah, that was fine, but yeah, you're right. That did not have the same tone as some of the other dream sequences, and it did work. Also,
Yeah.
in that scene, the therapist is played by Fred Melamed, who's like kind of a character actor that you see him and you're like, oh, there's that guy. I remember him from A Serious Man, the Coen Brothers movie. A lot of
Oh,
Coen
cool.
Brothers references here, but also Isabella Rossellini plays the professor that Margot sort of works with, I guess.
That's
That
right.
character sort of just disappears, and then I don't know. The character's purpose is kind of just to explain the themes of the movie a little bit. Like she's like,
Yeah.
oh, the queen bee needs all the I don't know. That's kind of dumb, but
Yeah. I think this movie kind of, in a way, we haven't jumped too much into it yet, but it does suffer from a similar thing as Blue Chips, where there's a lot going on. There's like the whole ant thing, even them going to that lab for that first date. Uh, they get stuck in the closet, and then he's breaking out of the closet, or he breaks the door and stuff, and then it breaks open the ant thing, and then all of them are dead. And I don't know. There's like so much going on in this movie that at the end, very little of it actually matters because they go down the horror route. Where if they were going more into this drama thing, like those early things maybe would have mattered more. But I don't know. It feels like there's a
yeah,
lot going on.
yeah, and some of the things don't necessarily pay. Like she goes home at one point, and then there's this horrifically cringy scene of her and her mom singing
Oh my god.
a Marilyn Monroe song to
Oh, that
her
was weird.
stepdad. Extremely weird, and I hated that scene. I wish my eyes didn't have to see that. Just yeah, and then also there's an aspect of her ex boyfriend being asexual, uh, and it's a weird part of the movie that it doesn't. I don't know why it's there. You know what I mean? Like they don't really explore it fully. Like the character is there for one scene and then he's never comes back. I don't know if it was supposed to be funny or if it was. I really don't know. All that stuff of her at home on school break was it. none of it worked for me really.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually the song luckily I'd forgotten about for a little bit, and now you brought it back to my mind.
Sorry.
That was so strange. It's this like hypersexualized song that the mom like forces her to do with her. Like the mom and daughter are doing it together for the is it stepdad?
Yeah,
Um,
stepdad.
for the stepdad and like his friends.
Yeah, it's extremely weird.
And yeah, and that old boyfriend was there for some reason and was like, I don't know, it was very strange that whole sequence. And then yeah, some of the parts that I thought were interesting when she went home was there's this whole idea during this movie of like the technological dread, of like this like anxiety over your phone and anxiety over people responding and like social media and stuff, right? Not necessarily social media, but like well, in a way, this kind of reminds me of like Dee Dee. From I don't know, did you see Dee Dee last year?
No, but I heard it was good. Yeah.
So there's a lot of themes in that movie about um, like how social media impacts our lives and how we connect with people and communicate. And this whole area of the movie explores that in a really cool way, where like on the train home, she like is looking over all the texts that she has with this boy, right? With the main guy, and she's looking over all these texts, and it feels like she's like really infatuated, right? Really excited, right? And we see that because we see her like scrolling through all this stuff. But then at home, there's a time when like she sends she's on her phone the whole time, and the parents are like making fun of her being on her phone and whatnot. But then she sends like a scandalous picture to the main guy and then doesn't give a response. And then she's like you can feel the panic in the way that she interacts with her phone, and you just feel that like technological dread and anxiety. And I thought that was really cool, and I really enjoyed that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And another aspect of the movie involving technology and social media is the character of Taylor, which that is her entire character, is that she is basically a Reddit thread come to life. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that character.
Well, you're right. Yeah, she's like a Reddit moderator um,
For
for a Reddit.
subreddit.
Yeah, um, and at one point she like kicks some guy out of her subreddit, and like it, this. Well, there's this whole theme in the whole movie with the main characters, but also with Taylor and this guy that like you never know who you're talking to, right? You really don't know anything about them when you're online. Because she kicks this guy off the subreddit and apparently has like weird, like doesn't like it, right? And I don't understand exactly why. I don't know if it was really explained or if I just missed it.
Because he's a man.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought. I didn't know if there was more.
Yeah, because I mean everyone's anonymous on Reddit, so I guess she assumes everyone in the subreddit is female, and then she finds out he's male and is mad about it.
Yeah, and so like there's that whole thing, and then she's at like dinner or at the bar or something, and like their best like guy friends at the school, they're like, oh, he's like James or something. He's really cool. Like, he's, whatever. And clearly other people that know him in real life think positively of him. And they mention that he's an Uber driver, which is important because later on Taylor takes an Uber to get to help Margot and realizes that Uber driver is the guy that she kicked off. And there's this really weird, like weird realization that she has, and that all felt so unreal that I didn't like it. But it does kind of get to that point of like one of the main themes of the movie where you don't know the people on the other side of the internet.
Yeah, and it's very weird that they meet so many people from the internet, like on this, like how many people on this subreddit are at your school? Like, it's very weird. But yeah, also Liza Koshy is in this. She's like a YouTuber, I guess she was, I think. And I'm not really familiar with her, but I just recognized her from being a YouTuber. So just another thing. I don't know. Huh?
Are you think was she at the bar sequence or was she like a one of the main characters?
She's so they have like those two friends that are like in theater and they're really annoying and they sing like a lot for no reason. She's the woman. I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be dating because the man seems very obviously gay, but I wasn't sure if they were. I don't know what was up with that. If they were just best friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But at one point they're like hanging. The Taylor and Margot are hanging out in their dorm, and like the two of them burst in and they're singing and all that stuff. So the lady is Liza Koshy.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I just felt like that was another recognizable cameo, I guess, in the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that character, her like doesn't really. I don't know. The movie's tone is kind of all over the place because like there's the scene where they're at her. It's actually the Liza Koshy character's. Her name is Beth. Her birthday party, I believe, and then Margot sees him. This is after their horrific sex scene, and uh, they like usher her out, like hide her and usher her out. And it's like kind of supposed to be funny, but then there was just this scene that was like horribly uncomfortable. And same with the Taylor when she gets in the car and she recognizes him, she like makes like a face like, oh, it's that guy. But then like I think it was supposed to be funny, but then now we're in the climax where like it's dramatic.
Like
So
life or death. Yeah.
literally, yeah. And so the tone was a little, I don't know. It was a little scattered, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I agree. And I think that the times when the tone was like more upbeat, not necessarily when it was trying to be funny, but like when it was more upbeat, like the times when you really felt that it could have been a drama are the times when I really enjoyed this movie. Like there was one other highlight actually on the way back, I think from summer vacation or whatever she was gone from. Um, the guy finally texts back right during this whole dread period where she's like panicking about him not texting back. And she like triple texts him or something, right? Like she sends like 4 texts in a row. But he finally texts back and says like, sorry, busy week at work. And then you get this like montage of like different things that he could do for work. There's like a small scene when he's like in a construction outfit and a small scene when he's like whatever, right? And I thought that was
Yeah.
really neat. And those type like when the tone is like that, I'm like so into the movie.
Yeah, that actually was funny. Yeah, I agree. If this was more of just like an indie drama comedy, I think it would have worked better. And it yeah, the ending of the movie does undercut like the serious themes that the movie is like about. Um, because like even like the Taylor character is annoying, but college kids are annoying. Like I was annoying in college, you know? Like that's just it is what it is. So even though the character was kind of like annoying to be with, it felt realistic. So
Yeah.
I didn't it wasn't awful. Um but like to take that realism that they built and then they just throw it all away at the end of the movie. Like completely throw it out the window and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There is so I suppose we should talk about the uncomfortable sex scene.
Mm,
Because this is the turning point for the movie, perhaps, as you mentioned.
yeah.
So this is the scene when they ended up watching Star Wars in the theater, and they go back to his place, and he has like a framed picture of Han Solo or something.
Yeah. She's realizing how much of a nerd he is. Also, before we get into it, I think it like there are such interesting ideas in the movie of like her not really knowing who this guy is and
Yeah,
learning about him and like feeling like she's in too deep and like you said with those sort of imaginary sequences of they use it in the sex scene to show her inner monologue. And so they take that idea that they've built through like a couple comedic little sequences and they use it really well. So like there are good things going on like here and there. But anyway, back
yeah,
you were saying that yes, she goes back to his house and sees how much of a nerd he is.
yeah.
He has a Minority
Um,
Report DVD, so that's a red flag.
that's right. Yeah, the DVD for it. Yeah, and so and then they go off and they're in bed and
I was
uh
gonna say, sorry, she
yeah
realizes that I guess she realizes later on, but she doesn't see any cats. He says that he has
Right.
cats, but she doesn't see them. So then
Mhm.
that is a factor. So they're back at his house, but he, um, yeah, he first of all, he has a house. She's only 20 years old, so there she's realizing she doesn't know as much about this guy as she had thought, and she's having second thoughts. But
Yes. Yeah, and those are building up, I think, even before they're in bed. Um, yeah, and then they're in bed, and those second thoughts are becoming more prevalent second thoughts in her mind, and we're seeing them more prevalently because we get to see that like that inner monologue as a dialogue between her and herself, right? Which is really cool. This is like a really good way to show this, and it really shows the discomfort that she's in um, as they're approaching the sex scene and during the sex scene, and it's a very uncomfortable, very like hard to watch scene where she's talking to herself about how much she doesn't like it and doesn't want this, but he doesn't see or know that. And yeah.
yeah, like he's even says at one point, he says like, is this okay, or do you want to do this or something? And she says, mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Like, so she basically, so she's affirmative, but she's holding back, and he doesn't, I don't know, he doesn't see those signs, I guess. And yeah, I don't know. It's not sexual assault, but it feels like it. It's like,
Yeah.
I think this is like, again, a very realistic, uncomfortable like reality for a lot of women. And like, I could definitely see this scene being like, relatable for a lot of people, but also for like young women and stuff. Like this could be like a cautionary tale of like what not to do, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, watching. I mean, if it's very uncomfortable the whole time, which is the point. So it's
Yes.
effective at getting that across.
Yeah. And it is, I mean, it's like, you know, you really don't want to watch, and you really hope that she makes some indication, or that he catches on to this to the small stuff. Um, and it doesn't happen. And
Yeah, or she
eventually,
make yeah, that she makes an excuse or says anything. She says, "Oh, I have to go to the bathroom." I have to, like, anything. Like, oh man, yeah.
yeah. And eventually, it kind of ends on it. It kind of ends on a funnier note where she like talks to herself and decides to fake an orgasm and does that to end this. And I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, um, but anyways, and then it ends, and it was a very that whole. I mean, it was long too. I don't know exactly how long it was, but that at least it felt long watching that.
Oh yeah, I might have only been like it was probably less than 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. It was it was
Yeah,
like, 'cause, I mean, yeah, yeah,
and I think the scene did really well at what it was trying to do. When I think when we're saying that it's uncomfortable, at least I'm not saying that I thought it was a bad scene. I think it was good for what it was trying to do, but it was one of those times in a movie when you know you're feeling very discomfort. Yeah, you like don't want to be
yeah,
sitting there, right?
yeah. And I don't know. Maybe part of it is that like the movie. I don't know. It didn't feel out of the blue, but it felt more disturbing than what I was expecting from the movie.
Yeah,
So maybe that was part of the thing of it. Like, I don't know, like the horror sequences before were kind of like goofy horror,
yeah,
and
like yeah,
and the other scenes are more comedic, just like college comedy kind of a thing. And it gets really serious, really fast, I guess.
yeah, and it's I don't know. It's
Also, I realized I said that this scene would be a good cautionary tale for young women. It would also be a good cautionary tale for men to watch,
yeah,
and see like the way how important it is to try to be communicative in those type of situations, and uh, all that kind of stuff. Basically, what not to do. Like, don't
yeah.
do what this guy's doing, being so oblivious and And yeah, so
Right.
this is just not what not to do when having sex, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this very serious, like um very important like commentary on consent and how that is it can be a very hard thing to navigate when you're young or inexperienced at this. I mean, even when you're not, I
I
assume
mean,
it
he
can
is
be
33
difficult,
years
right?
old,
Yes.
the character.
Yes. And
But he,
she's 20, right?
but exactly. But he does love Star Wars, so this is probably the first time he's having sex.
um and actually that becomes like so when they're like laying there after, he says something about, was that your first time? And she's talking to her own inner monologue and says something and then laughs. And it was like the first time where that like reality versus inner monologue or fiction thing like crosses, because she was actually laughing out loud and he heard her laughing, right? And so he kind of is taken aback a little bit, um and she has to backtrack a little bit, be like, I wasn't laughing, blah blah, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it probably is his first time, but either way, right? If you're inexperienced or young, this is a uncomfortable. It's a serious. It's a real like thing that happens, right? And so it's a very like oddly serious and important piece of this movie that is very quickly overshadowed by a very unrealistic ending.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
again, like building up to this, there's some really like, if this was like an indie drama or even like even with this scene, you could still make a really interesting like commentary on consent and technology and all this different stuff, and not have it go necessarily the way it does for the ending, right? And that could have been interesting. But
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if we're just going to get into the ending now, uh, basically, she, well, so after this, she kind of is with Taylor and she's like, all right, this went badly. I want to end it, but I don't know how. And Taylor, I forgot about this. This is so annoying. And like she takes her, she's, Margot is trying to word a breakup text as delicately as possible. And then Taylor steals her phone and just texts him like, I'm done with you. I forget exactly what she says, but she basically just says, I'm done with you. Don't talk to me again. Something like that. Like, this is over. She breaks up with him very quickly, very curt, no explanation, cold hearted. And yeah, what a fucking awful thing to do to your friend. Uh, so yeah, that was really annoying. If I didn't already hate this character enough, I fucking hate this lady. Like, she's awful. So then Robert is like whatever sad, and she thinks he's stalking her. He drives to her movie theater at one point, but doesn't go in. But she sees him like through a window. And he gets drunk and he calls her a whore, which is treated as like that was kind of funny, but it was like unintentionally funny. Like they're looking at these texts and it was like horror suspense, like slow push in. It was like so dramatic, and it's like just the guy being like, ah, fuck you. Like he's just drunk texting her. It's like, I don't know. I thought that was kind of silly, like how over dramatic that was.
yeah,
But then they are like, all right, we need to get self-defense things. So they go and they buy a bunch of like mace and maybe a knife. And also not Taylor, Margot buys a tracking device. And her
oh my
plan
god,
is to put a tracking device on Robert's car, and so she knows where he is at all times. This is where the movie goes completely off the rails.
yes, this is terrible. Because there, well, because then she actually goes to his house and breaks into his garage to
Yep.
put this tracking device on his car.
Yes. And
Like, what?
yes, completely ridiculous, insane, would never happen. I can't believe where this movie's going. Like this was just like yeah, it was pretty frustrating, this whole part of the movie. Also, she breaks into the garage and she sees the dog from the beginning of the movie, which I didn't even understand what that was supposed to be. Was he I didn't even understand what that meant. Did he leave did the dog run away while he was stalking her at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
was the dog supposed to be a trap for her? Like, I didn't understand it.
there's this weird backpedaling that like to like establish that he actually was stalking her at the beginning, and it feels like they're trying to really jam it in there, and they're like, yeah, see, it's the same dog that she saw once in her building, or that she like,
Outside her building, yeah.
yeah, and like,
If you were stalking a person, why would you bring your dog and then like let it loose? Or it made
yeah,
no sense.
no, it makes no sense at all. And when I noticed the dog, I thought, oh, like this guy ended up taking care of the dog after, she couldn't keep it in the dorm. And then I thought, oh, and then the dog's gonna be nice to her. Like, the dog knows her, and so it's not gonna make a big deal, and she's gonna hide when he comes into the thing. But that's not what happens. And I was so confused. And I did not really understand that like the idea was that it was his dog the whole time. Like that just didn't occur to me because that makes no sense.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying maybe does make more sense. So he was stalking her, and then this dog was a random stray, and he happened to take in the dog at the same time.
Yeah. See, like my thought wasn't even that he was stalking her though. My thought was just like this guy, like this guy was just, around the city or something. This dog had to be let loose from the dorm because she couldn't keep it. And eventually, he found it. And he's like, it's revealed that maybe he's a nurse, but
Yeah.
he takes it in and he's like, hey, let me take care of this dog and then whatever. But yeah, it was very odd to me that this was supposed to be his dog the whole time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, well, now when you said that, I'm like, maybe it wasn't supposed to. I don't know.
I think it is. I think because I was so confused when it's revealed that it was supposed to be. At least
Huh.
that's what I understood. But
Yeah. Also, you were mentioning the city and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's very unclear where this takes place. It looks like they shot it in New Jersey,
mm,
but at a certain point, she's in on the train coming back to school, and she texts him like, "Bye, suburbia." So I was
yeah,
like, "Is this supposed to be New York City?" But then her college campus is not New York City at all. Like it just doesn't. And his house also not New York City, clearly.
yeah,
So I was like confused as to where and it seemed like they almost intentionally were like not telling us like where it is. And I was like, why not just put this like in a city or like in a like I didn't understand that why they didn't do that.
yeah, yeah. That is interesting. I could see that like if this was supposed to be a realistic story, and the idea is like, this could be anywhere, right? It doesn't this happens to people everywhere, right, or something. But this ending is so unrealistic that it's hard to understand that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, back to the ending. He I guess the dog barks at her, so then Robert comes out to the garage and he sees the tracking device and then a fight or I guess she falls and hits her head on a concrete block and she's
Yeah.
knocked out.
Oh, she pepper sprays herself.
Yes, she pepper
Um,
sprays herself.
Also, I don't understand how he recognizes the tracking device. I don't know what a tracking device looks like. Nor would I like if I saw someone near my car, my first guess would not be that they're putting a tracking device on it. But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, they
Yeah.
get into altercation. She pepper sprays herself and gets knocked out. And then that's when she wakes up. She asks for water, and he says, "You don't need water. You need saline." And she says, "Oh, so you've been maced before?" And he says, "I'm a nurse." And it's kind of it feels like this revelation of like, yeah, you really don't know anything about this guy, but also, I don't know, is he a nurse? I don't know, because they're trying to
It
set it
seems
up like he was actually stalking her, and
yes.
it feels very conflicting. Like, is he actually stalking her, or is he a good guy? And I don't know.
Yes. I think the movie would have been more interesting if they made him more of a normal guy and showing like this is a normal guy. He's not trying to do anything wrong, but he does sex, you know what I mean? But the sex scene is still awful or whatever. And that is more interesting. But then yeah, there is like the maybe stalking element and then all of his actions at the end are just everyone's actions in this scene are just ridiculous and feel like from a different movie.
Yeah,
I don't understand why wouldn't water be better than nothing? Shouldn't you be trying to clean this lady up rather than just like I don't know what
yeah.
is it was very Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very bad, this whole scene. I didn't like it.
Yeah, and then he's nervous that if she leaves, people will believe her, or like that she'll tell people that he did this to her and they'll believe her. And then
Right.
she just wants to get out, and who knows what's going like it's very conflicting. And then they get into a series of fights, I guess, where she's trying to leave and he's trying not to let her leave. And at one point the basement door opens and we see the cats come out. So the cats were actually
Yes.
there the whole time. They were in the basement.
Exactly. So there's all these things showing that he's not like a
Right.
psycho killer, right?
Right.
But if in theory, let's say this happens, your ex-girlfriend goes into your garage with a tracking device and hits her head, maces herself, and then hits her head on the a concrete block. Your
I'm
idea
calling the
probably,
police.
yeah, probably call the police and say what happened, or at the very least, like try to help her feel better and like talk to her normally, like what was going on, have a normal conversation. The guy like acts like he's like in a bomb threat scenario, like he's freaking out
Yeah.
as if I don't know, as it was very strange. Like it just didn't make any sense, like what he was doing.
Yeah, it all feels so surreal. And to add to that, the best friend happens to get an Uber by the guy, the Reddit guy or whatever, and they get there like just as a fire's starting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. How did the fire start again? I don't remember.
I don't remember. She goes into the basement,
Yeah.
right? And then
Something gets knocked over, a heater maybe.
a
gets knocked
heater. There's a
over.
space heater in the basement, which is on for some reason.
Amazing. And then a fire starts in the basement and it traps them in there. And he has like a little metal door like
Yeah, like,
hideout in there. I don't really know what it is.
yeah, I think it's supposed to be like a mini bomb shelter thing.
So they hide in there from the fire, but the friend happens to get there like right as the fire starting. And I don't know, there's like a whole series of annoyances here, frankly.
Yep. Yeah.
But they survive.
Yeah, they survive, and then I guess he just moves away, and then she moves on with her life. And now, oh yeah, at one point, she like slices him with like a pizza cutter, which I thought was funny. I've never seen a movie where someone uses a pizza slicer cutter as a weapon, and I thought, in a different movie, this would have been funny.
Yeah, it feels like there's two conflicting movie ideas here. The indie drama that raises interesting questions about consent and about technological dread and how we interact with people online. And then there's the kind of more traditional horror movie that follows like maybe that you don't know who you're talking to idea, but then also has like I don't even know how you really turn this into that full-fledged horror, I guess. But
well, I mean, basically, like throughout the movie, the whole idea is they're not sure, like she's not sure who he is, basically. And then by the end of the movie, you need to pick one or the other. Like, is this a normal guy or is this a stalker, like killer guy? Right. And the if they just got rid of I mean, they'd have to change a lot. But like making him like stalking her from the beginning is weird. And didn't seem in line with that character, and the actions of both the characters felt like they came from that horror thriller version. So if they actually made him a stalker psycho guy, then maybe the third act would have made more sense.
Yeah.
But they don't, so then none of it works.
Have you seen the movie Disturbia?
Yeah.
So in that movie, Shia LaBeouf, this is a spoiler for Disturbia, but it's an old movie. But Shia LaBeouf is like, under house arrest. So he's watching his neighbors and he thinks one of them's a serial killer. But this movie is like, if he breaks into the house to figure it out and they never actually figure it out. And they get into this weird altercation and fight, like just like what happens in the third act here, but they never actually figure it out, right? They just, because that movie, it tries to convince you at times that the guy's a good guy, but then it also tries to convince you that he's actually a killer. And there's this whole idea of, is Shia LaBeouf just kind of going crazy from being locked up in his room, or is he actually uncovering something interesting? Yeah. And this kind of has a similar vibe of, is she just paranoid or is he actually a killer? But then it doesn't, like, then there's no actual conclusion here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, yeah. I guess the conclusion is that he's not a serial killer. He's just kind
Yeah.
of a nerdy, awkward, weird guy.
Yeah. I was like half convinced by the way that they were all acting at the end that when he opened that metal crate thing to let them survive the fire, there would be like dead bodies down there.
Yeah, I thought that too. He's like, oh, you gotta. Which it was crazy that he opens that. He's like, you gotta trust me. Yeah. It's like I just sliced you with a pizza cutter. Like we're fighting for our lives here. Why am I going to trust you? And then she go. So I thought that would have been interesting too. Of just like yeah, you're right. There's two different movies going on, and they don't work. They don't work together. So yeah, overall, Cat Person is not my favorite. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention about it, but I think I said everything I needed to say.
Yeah. I do think the movie did do a good job at times of making me feel like stressed because I didn't know who this person really was. Right. And I think that was cool. And I did think the technology stuff was interesting and there was some good stuff going on, but it just felt too clashing. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah. I would say if anyone out there meets someone at your job, maybe ask what they do for work or how old they are or anything about them before you go on dates and sleep with them. I would recommend that.
Also, I don't really know if it's a great idea to be like, trying to get numbers from people that are at their job,
Right. Well, she does try to like flirt with him at the beginning, and then he's like standoffish. Yeah. But then he's like, "Why don't you give me your number?" So, like he says it in a weird way.
Yeah,
it was strange.
Yeah, but regardless,
yeah,
I don't know if I would super recommend this movie. I think there's some interesting stuff going on, but it just feels like a letdown.
Yeah, I would not recommend it because, like we said, it doesn't work in either way. It's not a fun, campy horror thriller or anything like that. It's also doesn't really work as a drama. There's a scene that'll make you horribly uncomfortable in the middle. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I gave it a 2 stars out of 5.
I gave this one 2.5 out of 5.
There we go. Just the inverse of our Blue Chips ratings.
That's funny. Yeah, both movies that I think we wouldn't super recommend. Although I will say, in terms of collegey stuff, mine, I think my pick here, Cat Person, I think maybe has a little more to do with the college. Like you see some of the college friends and bars and things like that. Whereas Blue Chips takes the angle of like college sports, which is still just a different angle of college, but you don't see as much. You see like one classroom scene, like you said. But.
Yeah, this one definitely has more college life for an average college student. But yeah, I think as far as picks for movies about college, like it's kind of weird. Like the only college movies when we were looking, it's like a lot of like Animal House type of like frat comedy kind of things. So yeah. I feel like, we could have done worse, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Although if you guys have good college movie suggestions,
yeah,
I'm curious if there's many good ones.
We need them.
Yeah.
We need it's interesting because when we pulled the topic, I was like, oh, movie set in a college, that'll be super easy. But then like, I don't know, like Social Network is like partially set on a college, but it's Harvard and it's, I don't know. Good Will Hunting, I think, is one that we probably could have done.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was surprisingly shallow field to choose from, in my opinion.
Yeah, we spent, if you watched our last episode where we actually picked it, we actually spent a decent amount of time trying to pick it that we cut out from there because it was just hard to find movies. So we ended up deciding to do movies we hadn't seen. And yeah, I mean, that's a mixed bag sometimes, right? But
yeah, true. Well, now we're on to one of my favorite parts of the show. We get to pick our next movies. This will be episode 10, which is kind of cool. I have the magic cup. I will do a little shake if you want to go see on YouTube. I'm not looking.
Yes, that's right.
Can't see nothing. And I'm gonna pick. Hold on. All right. On episode 10.
Drum roll.
It will be. Ooh, this is a good topic. Episode 10 will be movies about movies.
Oh,
yeah, cool. Great topic. It also says in parentheses fiction. So we're not looking for documentaries like Burden of Dreams or stuff like that. The Heart of Darkness, the documentary about Apocalypse Now. Staying away from those, which that would also be a great topic. Like behind the scenes documentaries, that would be
That
a
would
really
be
good
cool.
topic. But we're gonna stick with fictional movies about movies. So I think now this one I think is going to be a pretty solid
Yeah.
field to choose from.
I feel like there's a lot of cool options here. I mean, a few things that come. I mean, as people probably know at this point, I'm a little more horror inclined, perhaps, but like things like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Scream 3 is about the making of
The
a
worst
movie.
Scream movie.
Yeah, I'm not picking that one, but
yeah, please don't pick Scream 3. I don't want to. I mean, come on.
Although it's kind of funny, we could have done Scream 2 for the last one with college movies, and then Scream 3 for this one.
Oh yeah,
That would have been funny.
That would have been good, actually. Damn. Well, that's the downside of the show. We can't plan on that. But honestly, it works out because now I don't have to rewatch Scream 3. But yeah, movies. I mean, one of the first things I thought of was Singing in the Rain.
Ooh.
So that's a great movie. I mean, I just found a list on Letterboxd, and yeah, there are a lot of good choices here. There's 8.5. There's a few really great documentaries that we can't pick, like F for Fake. Well, yeah, I guess if we're going just fiction, and then This Is Not a Film also wouldn't count. But there's Sherlock Jr. There's Close Up by Kiarostami, which I guess would count. It's not as it is about movies kind of, but I don't know. We also covered Perfect Blue on the show. That's sort of I guess it's more TV, but
yeah, it's kind of ambiguous actually. I think we maybe even talked about like, are they making a TV or is it like a TV movie or something?
right.
Something else we've mentioned recently in the show is Shadow of the Vampire, which is like about the making. Well, not about it, but a reimagining of the making of the original Nosferatu.
True. That would be. I've never seen that.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. We'd be on our Nosferatu binge.
That's right. We did Nosferatu 1922. We did Nosferatu 2024.
Also, yeah, we've already covered Perfect Blue on the show. We've also already covered Adaptation, which would be a fantastic choice for a movie about a movie.
Yeah.
Another good one would be Ed Wood, Tim Burton movie.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe Tim Burton's best movie. One of his best for sure. Also, we talked about Coen Brothers earlier. Hail Caesar would be a good pick, I think. That is, I think, one of the more underrated Coen Brothers movies. Yeah, we got some. I mean, also Mulholland Drive.
Ooh.
Good work.
Yeah, I feel like there's. Oh, was that Babylon movie from 2023? Was that that's about movies, right?
Yes, it is. I actually haven't seen it yet. I've been wanting to watch it. So if you wanted to pick that, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be down to rewatch.
There's also, I mean, there's another angle of this stuff of like Tropic Thunder, right?
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at a lot of movies that I've already seen because I just figured that. I mean, hey, last time I picked something that I hadn't seen yet, it didn't quite work out. But I think Sunset Boulevard would be a really good pick. Norma Desmond, iconic character. Also, Man with a Movie Camera. If you wanted to go back to a silent movie, that would count.
Saying on the more recent stuff, there's also did you ever see Super 8, the kind of found footagey movie?
No, I think that's the only J.J. Abrams movie I've not yet to see. Which is weird because it's not like I'm a J.J. Abrams fan. I just happened to see he only has like 6 movies, maybe. So
yeah, 8.5 is this about making a movie? I know it's about a movie director, right?
Yeah, I think that would count. 8.5. That's in your Criterion 40 set. I think
it is. Right? Get through some more of that.
Yeah, 8.5. I mean, I saw that years ago. It's a weird movie. I'd be down to rewatch it because I haven't seen it in a long time. But I remember being like watching it and kind of becoming away with it, like just disoriented, and I'm like, I don't even really know what I just saw. um,
Oh man, there's actually a lot of good options here, I feel like.
yeah, The Player would be a good option. Goodness gracious. Movie about movies. So should it be about the making of a movie? Should it? I don't know. Part of me is like, I should just pick Babylon.
I mean, hey, again, it is an excuse to kind of watch those things that we might not always that we haven't watched.
We could also do State and Maine, David Mamet movie. Wait a minute. What year did Shadow of the Vampire come out?
2000.
That's the same year as State and Maine.
Oh,
There would be a connection.
there we go.
Shadow of the State and Maine. State and Maine.
Shadow of Maine?
Shadow of the Vampire. Vampate and Maine. If I did Knight of
State
Cups,
of
it
the
could
Vampire?
be Shadow of the Knight of Cups or Knight of the Shadow of the Vampire.
Oh my god, just mixing it all around. Shadow of the Night of the.
Yeah. Knight of Cups is I really like Knight of Cups, but I feel like it's not really about movies that much. Like it's just a guy being listless the whole movie. All right, well I have to pick something soon. This is the hardest one I've had. I feel like I have
there's just so many options for this one.
Yeah, I feel like I have choice like paralysis.
Yeah.
And I mean too many good options. I can't decide on one.
And I feel like there's a lot of good options and also just a lot of different options.
Yeah.
Where like it's not like there's a clear pick.
God, Babylon is long.
I mean, isn't Inland Empire also
I don't know what the fuck Inland Empire is about. Inland Empire is about I don't know what it's about.
So I am going to lock in on Shadow of the Vampire, going along with our Nosferatu kick. We watched the original 1922 Nosferatu. We watched Robert Eggers' 2024 Nosferatu. Now we can go back and we can watch Shadow of the Vampire from 2000.
That is exciting. And also, neither of us have seen Shadow of the Vampire. So that'll be interesting. And guess what? We have not learned our lesson from this episode. We're going to pick, both going to pick movies we've never seen before. Again, after we just had to get through Blue Chips and Cat Person. But I'm picking State and Maine, the David Mamet movie, also from the year 2000. And so I don't know what we're going to call this episode. Shadow of the State and Maine? State and Maine of the Vampire?
State and Vampire?
State and Maddo of the Vampire.
State and Maddo of the State and Maddo of the Vampire.
I like that.
State and Maddo of the Vampire. It's perfect. It rolls right off the tongue.
It rolls right off the tongue. State and Maddo of the Vampire. All right. Well, we are doing it again. We're picking movies we haven't seen. We'll see. Maybe, second time is a charm.
That's right.
So
make sure that if you guys want to be keeping up with all of our stuff that we're putting out there, including our reels and our YouTube shorts, make sure you're following us on YouTube and Instagram. And all of those links are, of course, in our Letterboxd. So you can find that with just Mind Your Movies, all one word, and you can find us right there.
And just so everyone knows, State and Maine is on Amazon in the US, but Shadow of the Vampire is a little harder to find, but I believe you can rent it on Amazon Prime and maybe some other places. So yeah, there you go.
Yes.
That's how you can watch the movies for 2 weeks. And then next episode will be House, Nobuhiko Obayashi's 1977 masterpiece, I'd say. Wacky, off the wall horror movie. So please watch House. If you haven't seen House, go watch it. It's awesome. And join us for episode 9.5.
So you've got homework. You've got a week to watch House, and then you've got 2 weeks to watch State and Maine and Shadow of the Vampire, if you so dare.
These are good choices, I think.
Yeah, I feel much more confident than Cat Person.
Yeah. This I will say, we took some time to pick this. I was very much struggling with choice paralysis. I had so many options. I was thinking Sunset Boulevard would be good. We were thinking about Babylon, 8.5. We thought about. So There are a lot of great options for this.
Yeah. So also let us know if you have your favorite picks for movies that are about movies.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.